Hi Jamil.
Hello, how are you, Nick?
Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm good, how are you?
Good, I'm great, thank you. Really good.
Kind of moving into summer, lovely day, and life is good.
Yes, good.
Where do I start? Psychologist extraordinaire. How defined, let me start with kind of, you've worked across different industries, different sectors, different kind of, all sorts of different places. How pre-described was it that you wanted, what you wanted to do? How much do you know what you wanted to do when you started?
I fell into psychology.
Okay.
It was never my thing. My degree was business and marketing, so I actually come from a commercial background. I had an amateur interest in psychology and no more. But I had such an interest that I talked about it often, I shared it often with other people. And then psychology seemed to find me. There was a golfer who was quite good and on the European tour at the time, but was struggling. So asked me to come along and help him. And,
how did you meet him?
And pure luck, pure chance.
Okay.
I think that he knew someone that I knew. Said, look, if this guy does psychology, can he come and help me? I said yes, even though I wasn't sure that I could. I thought we'd give it a go. I'd go and read a book, find out. And I knew nothing about golf or golfers, but I ended up working with him, and he almost won the Open. He led for 3 days, lost on the final day to Ernie Els. And because professional sport is such a small world, he knew other golfers at a high level who he talked about his turnaround being due to the psychological work he's been doing. And then before you knew it, I was working with some of the best golfers on the planet. So there was no design. I would love to tell you that there was this fabulous business plan. There was this great thinking on my part.
Yeah.
It was just I ended up literally overnight working with some really, really good golfers. It just so happened that these really good golfers know really good footballers who know really good cricketers. The agents, the managing agents, the sponsors, the businesses who get involved in these people were all related too. And before you knew it, I was talking to the sports community and sports people across a number of sports, but also to the businesses who support them. And that's how I ended up working as a psychologist in business and in sport.
Okay, so let's chat about the sport part and then we can talk about the transition to business. Are different sports people from, at different sports, do you get different issues, different problems?
Yeah, you do.
Different...
Golfers are dreadful. Golfers are awful to work with.
Why?
I spend most of my time working in golf. This is why I look as bad as I do. I spend most of my time with golfers. I think the reason why is because everything seems to happen in isolation. When you are playing tennis or football, it's combative. You're actually actively reacting against someone else. Yeah. When there's a ball sat in front of you and it's up to you to hit it in your own time, if it goes wrong, I think there's quite a lot. It's quite easy to be insular about your thinking. So I think that golfers think a lot. Yeah. The problem that you've got is that your subconscious mind knows more about your sport than your conscious mind ever will. Okay. So when we start to talk to ourselves about how we should do something, it actually becomes more complicated. We almost need to try and freewheel and free think to allow us to perform well. But golf has a lot of time to think, and it's almost the thinking which compromises the action. That's the problem. This is why golfers are so hard to work with.
So I think I think the sport event that's always intrigued me the most, because I'm not a golfer or anything like that, but it's the Ryder Cup. Because you've got these individuals and everything you described, who basically just working for themselves every day and just focusing on themselves, suddenly in a team environment. Yes. Firstly, what's your experience of, have you worked with golfers in the Ryder Cup or before the Ryder Cup, and how do they change their attitudes with the whole thing?
Yes, it's a really good question. These people in the Ryder Cup compete against each other day in, day out. They come together for 1 week, 2 weeks in a year, and they play together perfectly as a team. My job as a psychologist with the Ryder Cup team that I worked with was really to work with the management team to make sure that messages were aligned, to make sure there's clarity in regard to objectives and communication, but also to work with the players as individuals. I still work with the players as individuals, so although you're part of a team, you may have different pressures, different stresses, different ways of thinking and doing, and I optimize potential by creating mindsets for success. That's what I do. So I work with the individuals and the team. The way in which they come together is the fact that they have a common purpose and a common goal. This is why in a football team you can get people, 11 people, who don't speak the same language, different religions, different experience, different skill sets, play different roles in the team, but they play perfectly together. And the reason why is that the outcome is quite binary. So people in teams like the Ryder Cup or in a football team know what winning looks like. The problem that we've got in business is that the metrics can be quite complex. So sometimes it's quite difficult to unravel what winning looks like in a large trading-led organisation, and this is why it's sometimes difficult to get senior managers and leaders to work together because of their individual responsibility to their own goals and their belief in what success looks like. With a sports team, you could argue it's easier because there's greater clarity and greater understanding of winning.
So I'm going to return to sport, but I'm really intrigued about what you said about business in the context of, we hear all the time that business is only looking at the next quarter in terms of share results, in terms of kind of profit for themselves and what they're doing, and actually that's kind of impacted society as a whole in terms of how we look at what success is success and isn't success. But in terms of what you're saying, what I hear is the fact that actually business is doing that so actually they can operate better as a team, because by making tangible goals over, we've got to hit this amount of money for the next quarter, it means they can all be working together to a common goal. But actually, maybe that's detrimental because a long-term vision is then lost, which is a far more fluffy thing. How can a business balance up those two things if they're trying to get a team together but leaving them with a fluffy, not fluffy, that's wrong, but leaving them with a less clear purpose?
Yeah, sure. It's a good question, and I think that I always say that purpose maximisation will drive profit maximisation. Okay. So therefore, organisations need to mobilise communities around a purpose. At the moment, communities are outperforming bureaucracies and hierarchies when it comes to maximising human talent. So companies who can form communities based around peer responsibility, peer learning, peer coaching are the ones who have been most successful at the moment. We still have a lot of organisations and sectors who work in bureaucracies and hierarchies, traditional structures. So I agree that the quarterly charge towards these numbers allows people to be successful, but I argue at what cost? So I think the balance is between purpose maximisation, knowing what that long-term plan and goal is, allowing people to be emotionally engaged with it because they've helped co-author and co-create it as a community of people, but also understand what short-term building blocks or fundamentals need to take place to achieve that goal. It's a balance at the moment, I believe, between numbers and purpose. And the reason why I say that is that it's not change which is catching organisations out. It's the pace of change which is catching organisations out. So we need this common purpose to know which way we're heading long term, but the plan needs to be changeable and variable in accordance to what's happening in regard to changing dynamics in the marketplace for many organisations at the moment.
So define to me how you view what purpose is. I mean, especially in light of, or we read about the generational stuff and things like that, that actually the millennials, all they want is purpose. What would you see purpose is for a company?
Yes, so, I mean, I think purpose as an individual, when I talk to sports people, purpose is about losing yourself to something which is bigger than you. Okay. And the reason I say purpose is never achieved, purpose is never achieved, it's attained on a daily basis. The mistake that people make, individuals make, sports people, is that they think that their purpose is their destination. They're heading towards something. It's not true. Purpose is attained on purpose is never attained. It's achieved on a daily basis. Okay. This is why Tiger Woods keeps working. It's why Warren Buffett keeps working. Richard Branson keeps working because they fulfill their purpose on a daily basis. It's a reason for getting out of bed in the morning. So goals and targets, you'll be successful. It allows you to measure things and manage things. In my experience, you don't beat someone with purpose, and I'm talking about in business and in sport, because purpose is that reason to get out of bed in the morning, that reason for being. But in regard to business, to be more specific, purpose is about fulfilling the potential of the organisation in context of the value that it creates for its customers. So many organisations will define themselves by what they sell, not by what the customer values. And there's a really big difference. Okay. So as a trading organisation, it's all about what you sell. It's about being relevant in regard to your products and services. I feel the most successful organisations at the moment aren't defining themselves by what they sell, they're defining themselves by what the customer values. And that to me is defining your purpose. If you also do that, and you constantly manage your organisation in the context of creating value for customer. It doesn't matter how changeable the world is, because as long as we're across customer and what customer is valuing, no matter how that changes and how quickly that changes, and it is at the moment for so many sectors and businesses, we're always future relevant or future literate.
So listen, we're in political times and we're in interesting times, and one of the organisations you work with is the Royal Mail, worked with is the Royal Mail. In light of kind of the renationalisation possibly of certain industries and things like that, how does the purpose of that sit with what Royal Mail went out to try and achieve when they got privatised, and did they ever achieve a purpose, I suppose? And is that why they're struggling now? And is that why kind of the Labour Party are looking at it and saying, well, maybe it's not working because they haven't really understood what they're doing, and we need to renationalise them to bring them back into...
I mean, without being political.
Yes, trying to avoid the politics.
without being political. Yes. I feel as though any organisation now needs to understand that there's probably going to be two types of organisation in the future, brave or dead. And I think that it's not enough to replicate what you've already done in any sector. We're not seeing companies being wiped out, we're seeing sectors being wiped out. So I say that you cannot trust the future to anyone who champions the past. So whether it be Royal Mail, whether it be the Post Office, whether it be a bank or a utility, this world is changing very quickly. Blockchain, AI, AR, 3D printing, all of these things, digital is just the hors d'oeuvre. All of these things will come along and disrupt all business models. So whether you're a nationalised or a privatised industry, it doesn't necessarily matter. It's the mindset and culture for performance within the organisation which does.
So for you to go into any big organisation that's been around for many, many years and has structure as hierarchy, what are the 1-2 key things that you'd be looking for them to do in order for them to move on and progress and innovate in order to avoid dying off?
Sure, yeah, I agree. And that this bit about innovation and not dying off is the key factor. So I think any organisation needs to form communities around mobilising talent in a way which is meaningful to customer. I think that people know the answers. If you go into any organisation and you start to ask people about what would future-proof this organisation, what will allow this organisation to be successful forever, people will know the answers. Unfortunately...
What people?
I think anyone in the organisation. Okay. If you've got 3,000 people in your company, there are 3,000 people there who all will have the opportunity or the ability to come up with a really good idea. Okay. Our problem is that we don't create the environment for these people. So people are almost too quick to train the people rather than fix the environment. People say to me all the time, how do I get my team more innovative? Well, they're human beings, they are innovative. Okay. So as humans, we are creative and innovative. Look at what we've created as people. Our problem with organisations is the environment. So the first thing that I would do in a company is to form communities based around understanding what future relevancy looks like. Allow people to co-author and co-create the future. The problem that we've got is that we don't invert the pyramid. We've got a few people at the top who make the decisions, whereas we're probably better off to ask 3,000 people who are interacting with suppliers, customers on a daily basis, understanding the context of the business, the fabric of the business, and have a more three-dimensional view. So if we can take counsel for as many people as possible, the wisdom of crowds, I think we can get a better understanding of the world in which we're living in.
So I think that leads me going back to then the sport and cricket. Let me take you on to cricket, because there's an example there where you've got a captain, but actually they seem, and I don't know, I'm not in the world of cricket again, but they seem to almost manage collectively. While the captain is leading the team, actually the individual areas all come together and they're actually looking at that. What was your experience of the world of cricket? And it comes across as a forward-thinking sport while we're obviously being steeped in history. Tell me.
Yeah, I think that whether it be cricket, Formula One, Premiership football, the one thing I found, coming back to this bit about captaincy, is that the people believe that high-performing teams have a strong leader. I don't believe that's necessarily true. I think high-performing teams are a team of leaders, and there's almost this peer responsibility, an ability for people to work and manage and lead each other and inspire each other, which drives performance. It's great to have someone who is managing and directing. It's good to have someone who's in charge, and ultimately decisions will lie with them. But in regard to the day-to-day policing of behaviours and values in a team, the strongest teams I've worked with seem to do it themselves.
So why doesn't business see that and do that?
I don't know why business doesn't see that. And it's a really interesting one, because I think business has grown out of a way of being and doing which has enabled it to be successful in the last 100 years. So you think about how businesses are managed, led and structured, things have worked very well. In regard to business, industry, commerce, organisations have done very well. However, times have changed such that you can't trust the future to anyone who champions the past. The future demands us to be different.
Right.
So the way in which customers now in cross sectors want to engage with their or partner organisations, transact, and how they want certain supply chains or value chains to be, means that the structure of the organisation has to change. I think it's really hard for people to get their heads around the fact that they need to give up what's allowing them to be successful at the moment to be successful in the future. It's counterintuitive, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So many people are prepared to change when it's failing, but you go into an organisation which is successful and say, do you know what? It needs to change for you to continue your success, and people will say, hang on a minute, I don't get that.
But also, is it not the fact that kind of the time scale that you need to change in, ultimately that might be the length of the time scale left, because they're a senior person in the organisation, already done a number of years. They haven't got that long left in the business anyway, so why would they take the risk?
Do you know what, you've hit it on the head. There's a friend of mine, Mark, whenever I'm having a pint of beer and complaining about the cultural change work that I do in some organisations which are fairly slow at moving, he'll say to me, Jamil, he says, you've got to remember, it's very difficult to get someone to understand an idea when their salary depends upon them not understanding it. And it's if you've been 25 years in a bank or a utility and you've got 5 years to run, and now you're telling me that what I've done isn't right and I now need to move into a different space, which is counterintuitive, which is difficult. I think for some people it's turkeys voting for Christmas, isn't it?
So touching on kind of we've seen, and the world's seen, massive rise of fintech, and I think it's a really good example of basically all these challenger banks being set up. And fundamentally, it's because historical banks haven't known how to change or what to do. And so we've seen this new movement, but actually we're now starting to see a backlash whereby the structures underpinning the challenger banks aren't maybe what they need to be, aren't rigorous enough to support them as banks. Is there a danger in sectors of moving too quickly and not really understanding what you need to do for kind of at foundation level in order to move ahead, and how again do you balance that?
Yes, I mean there's always a danger of moving too quickly, but I say the pace of change externally must be matched by the pace of change internally. So whatever's happening on the outside of a marketplace in regard to competitor organisations, as an organisation, the only way in which you stay future relevant, future literate is to move at the same pace. That may be too quick for you though, as an organisation. That's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think that I think you're absolutely right. I think that there are some propositions and some offers which probably move too quickly, either for what customers expect and want, or for investors or whoever else to be able to underpin them. But I think business is about this natural evolution. When you look at the dot-com boom and how many organisations had millions, billions of pounds put into them, dollars, that and some fell by the wayside very quickly. I think there's a natural evolution with business. I think that at the moment what we're seeing is a natural evolution across sectors, not just companies in those sectors. So I think it's possibly more pronounced. I think that what we need to do is to understand customer more so than we ever have done before.
Okay. Let me take you back to sport again, because I'm flitting between the two. What's been your favourite? Who's your favourite? What sector in sport? What sport?
Yes, what sport?
Have you enjoyed? Has been the biggest challenge for you, and why?
Yes, well, I think golf has been the biggest challenge for me. And I think the reason why is that
it's because you went and you were like, I don't even know if I can do this psychology thing.
Well, do you know what? It's funny because I think part of my strength is that I don't know golf.
Right.
So I've never played in my life. I've never picked up a club. I've worked with the best golfers in the world. And
you tell them this?
And they know that. And I think that is part of the attraction.
Oh, really?
Is that I can't talk about anything apart from psychology to them. So when they start talking to me about technique, I've got no interest and no idea.
I find this fascinating because I regularly speak to my team about actually the most powerful thing we have is to admit we don't know.
Yes,
so actually
when
you're in a meeting room, to turn around to someone and say,
yeah.
I literally have no idea what you're talking about, is much more powerful than pretending you do.
It's so true. And because...
But everyone's scared, to finish, but everyone's scared of that automatically kind of downgrades your kind of expertise or anything like that, and people will look down on you.
Yeah.
Was that a fear for you, or was it just like, this is who I am and actually I'm going to be honest about it?
No, I think that, I think for me it was the marriage. It was the marriage of, I know psychology, I know performance, I know mindset, attitudes for performance. These people know golf. Let's come together and see what we can do. Okay. So, and so I could only talk to them about the bits which were most relevant to me. Yeah. And I think that, I think the other thing which really helps is that, and you're absolutely right about this bit about not knowing, is that when I asked them questions, there were questions that children would ask. Yeah. And the more professional that you get, the more you move away from the basics. It's only when a child asks you about the basics that, you start to contextualize, you start to summarize, you start to dissect and analyze in a way you've moved away from. I said to Darren Clark, I worked with Darren Clark for 2 years, and I said to him, when did you play your best golf? And he said, I played my best golf when I was an amateur. And I said, well, why? What do you do? Yeah. And he said, well, so I used to hit the ball, then I'd go and find it, and then I'd hit it again. And what a great way to learn golf. Absolutely. And then you get to Darren Clark, top 15 in the world, Ryder Cup captain, majors player, and you're talking sponsorship, you're talking commercial days, you're talking equipment manufacturers, you're talking schedule. There's a complication now to what you do. You're more than a golfer, aren't you? You run your own business. There's an entourage. Whereas almost the best golf and best sport is played with the simplicity. And I think that this is why asking baby questions, actually stood me very well. Yeah. When I remember being in front of Thomas Bjorn, and Thomas Bjorn saying, I can't hit the ball like this. And I said, how do you want to hit it? And he said, I want to hit it like, and I can't remember who it was, like Sevi maybe. Right. And I said, I don't even know how he hits it. How does he hit it? And Thomas said, he hits it like this. And he hits it like right, there you go. There you go. Brilliant, I love Whereas that. A coach probably would have gone into, well, what Sevi does is that he gets his arm in this position. And then what he does is, and then deconstructed it from a mechanical perspective. So in regard to football, cricket, all this Formula One, all the stuff that I've worked in, I've never really known much about the sport. So, my conversations have been incredibly basic. Yeah. And I've understood the person in regard to what they do and then help them to do it better by working on those basics. So obviously golf was the first sport you were in, but which of the sports that you've worked in would you say are the most enlightened or receptive maybe to you coming in? Yes, that's good. Do you know what's funny? So I started working in the Premiership 2007, and I was amazed how receptive Premiership footballers were to it. Really? Yeah, I was surprised. But I think two reasons why is that one, I had good pedigree in other sports, so I'd already worked with people who got to #1 in the world in cricket, in golf. So I think that they knew that I worked with some good people. Okay. So there's the credibility. I think that they are aware, sports people these days are aware there is a psychological edge, that talent is not enough. So there's lots of talent. We probably know lots of people at school who are great at football at 15 and just think, again, they're going to go on and make it. Yeah, and they don't. And there's a reason why, which is not to do with their talent. So, and we all know those people. So I think that I think people are more understanding that there is more to get from a person than their physical innate talent, and that can be achieved through a mindset for performance. So I think that people are more receptive. I also think that how you communicate, whether you're a guest speaker, whether you're a facilitator, a consultant in business, or working with a sports person, is incredibly important. I know people with much more content than me, they've got super fabulous degrees in psychology and all areas of performance coaching, and incredibly academic, and read substantially more books than I have, and got substantially more qualifications. But the difference is how you get your content across. When you're sat in front of a 17-year-old who's earning £2 or £3 million a year, and they left school at 16 to do so, they've had a really bad day, they hate themselves and hate you, what do you say? And there's no textbook or no degree which teaches you that. And I think that to get your message across and to get the rapport and understanding and relationship to affect change is probably the most important thing. You've probably seen it with guest speakers. There's guest speakers who know a lot, good knowledge, good background, good expertise, but the reason why their content doesn't land with the audience is that they don't create the rapport. They haven't necessarily got the relationship. And I think that we need to almost work harder on the relationship with our audiences, whether it's one-to-one or whether it's one-to-many, to make sure our content is maximised in the eyes of the audience.
Yes, I can't reiterate it. I fully endorse what you're saying. I find it fascinating that people can select a speaker based on the qualifications, have no idea what they are like on stage, or alternative because they've seen a YouTube clip of someone who's got a 2-minute wacky show reel or something. Yes. They immediately think they're the greatest.
Must get on with my 2-minute wacky show reel.
I look forward to seeing it. Okay, so within the world of sport, talk to me about cricket, because I'm conscious.
But you know nothing about cricket.
That's my question. What sports do you know? What sports do you know about? What sports do you play? You say you.
Do you know I don't play any sports anymore?
Do you like sport? I
used to play cricket. I used to be good at cricket.
Okay.
That's how I got into psychology. I was good at cricket, and someone said you're wasting your talent. So technically I was really good, I just couldn't be asked to play. Right. So I would choose to play when I wanted to play. So if I was playing against some really good opposition, I would turn it on and play well.
Is this not all cricketers? This is the impression I get.
Possibly, yeah, who knows. And then someone said, you should see a psychologist, you're wasting your talent. And that's how I saw a psychologist for my sport. And it really got me into psychology. It took me further away from cricket. Yeah. So tell you about cricket, what do I know about cricket? I'll tell you what I know about cricket, and unfortunately it's what I know about golf too. It's probably what I know about business, which is the people who win in cricket, the people who have great careers, or even win games, and the same with golf, the people who win tournaments, and the same in business, the people who win, are not necessarily the people who make the least mistakes. They're the people who react best to the mistakes that they make. Right. So you'll see it with a golfer all the time. So a golfer will win over 4 days. It's not that they made the least mistakes. They reacted best to the mistakes that they made. Right. In business, it's exactly the same. And in business, that people can make mistakes. It doesn't make them a mistake. People can fail. It doesn't make them a failure. And I think if we can detach the action from the person, we stand our best chance of learning our craft. Be that business, be that cricket, be that golf. But presumably in the world of golf and in the world of cricket, certainly a 5-day game of cricket, as opposed to the Premiership, is the fact the decisions you're making actually almost have longer term ramifications. So actually, is there a closer analogy for the mindset of a golfer or a cricketer who plays for, again, 5 days, to the world of business than maybe a sports person who's footballer, who's reacting over 90 minutes and basically one game. One game depending on the next game. I hear you thinking, and I understand thinking. I think there are two things. I think that a business is probably a little bit like both of them. Okay. Because there's long-term ramifications, like you get in a 5-day game. I totally understand and agree. But I also think that businesses now need to be more agile and more opportunistic. So that 5-year plan, and I remember working with Nissan when they had a 30-year plan. Wow. So I think that I think it's very difficult. So I think that you need to understand long term, but the ability to be opportunistic and agile in our thinking and doing is incredibly valuable at the moment. So decisions like on a football pitch, where you make a decision, it's wrong or right, and then something happens as a result of it. I think it's incredibly important for businesses to respond and react in the same way. If we can deploy resource to opportunity in a more agile way in business, I think we could become much more successful. But what happens at the moment on the internet is that the reason why some of these businesses who you see are successful overnight turn their business from something very small and unknown into global phenomenon is that on the internet we can test cheaply. Put something out there, experiment, see if it works. If there's traction, you can deploy resource to opportunity very quickly. Get some investing because it's working. businesses perhaps don't find have the same ability to find that seed funding, that capital from in the business. How many people in the business have to sign several documents to buy a £5 sandwich for a client, let alone have the opportunity to put a substantial amount of money towards an online offering which is working at the moment?
But it comes back to that hierarchical nature of the fact that so many people have to sign it off.
Yes.
Which by the time you've got it, it's all dead, and therefore businesses don't entrust their employees enough because they can control the entire environment. Ultimately, the manager can only stand on the side of a football field or stand on the side of kind of a cricket pitch and shout directions, but fundamentally the people who are actually in the middle are the ones who take the decisions.
Yes.
Whereas actually what business tries to do is kind of control every single aspect, and therefore it doesn't work.
It's one of the reasons why innovation is locked in organisations. So in organisations we have a monopsony. So the monopoly is one seller, lots of buyers. The monopsony is one buyer, lots of sellers.
Okay.
So the line manager or head of, is the monopsony. That's the person who can buy the ideas. Might be 30 people, 50 people who are sellers of ideas. They've all got ideas. They're working with a customer. They find some friction or something's not working for the customer. I've got a new idea. Someone else in the canteen is talking to someone else, new idea about product or service. Customers are asking us for this, we don't provide it. Why don't we provide it? Maybe a new income stream. So you've got 30 people who perhaps have got these new ideas, but there's only one person who can buy them. But that person will make a decision based upon whether they've had an argument with their partner that day or what their line of sight objectives are. And so all of that creative thinking, all of that innovation, which we believe isn't there, is there. They just choose not to say it. I have no idea how many people go to their deathbed with their music unheard. Great idea, which would change the business forever. Great idea, change the sector forever. But they choose not to suggest it because the mechanism, as you've described it, isn't in place to allow them that freedom of speech.
So give me a business for you that has actually managed to do this. Not a startup, like a traditional business that actually managed to free minds and actually start getting people internally to think.
Sure. I mean, it's really hard to pick a business which is doing incredibly well because of it. Tom Shoes is a business which has done amazingly well by creating a sense of purpose.
Okay.
It's been a bit about purpose maximisation drives profit maximisation. So Tom Shoes, I don't know if you're familiar with them, Nick, but they've got this buy one, give one policy. So they sell shoes all over the world. If you buy a pair of Tom Shoes, then we will give a pair of shoes to someone who hasn't got them. So what they've done is create future relevancy by having the reason for being, the purpose of the organisation, is we're here to save lives.
Okay.
So they're not there to say, if the CEO of Tom Shoes walked in now and you said, what do you do? He wouldn't say, I run a shoe company. He'd say, I'm in the business of saving lives. And those values are embedded. And the values are not attached, they're embedded. People say to me sometimes, do we want to be like Google? How do you be like Google, this organisation? And I say you can't be, because you weren't born that way. You can only attach it, you can't embed it. So Tom Shoes have embedded it. So even things that happen in the business on a regular basis allow them to show and illustrate their values. So once a month if you work for Tom Shoes, you have to come to work with no shoes on. It teaches you what it's like to go a day without shoes. So the product modification is all based upon saving lives. So the extension of the product is not more shoes now, it's spectacles, selling glasses, buy one, give one. So
when you go into an organisation, I think it's really kind of when you don't have to name names, it's not about naming names, but when you go into an organisation, what would you be wanting to hear from them which would excite you to be, these people are actually, this company's actually receptive to change, and which one? And what would be like, they just want to attach something, they just want to be Google?
I think for me, for people to truly embed things, they have to be open-minded. So if I walked into an organisation, I would want to see open-mindedness.
Okay.
I want to see high levels of challenge and high levels of curiosity. Okay. I argue now that curiosity is worth more than creativity. So asking these why questions, understanding why things happen and don't happen, and asking about them is an incredibly important way in which we can use time and space in an organisation to understand customer and understand our business in the context of customer. So I think I like curiosity, I like challenge, I like open-mindedness. So I walked into an organisation and the senior management team were not fixed. I talk about mental tram lines. We all work under mental tram lines and habitual thinking.
Yeah.
But if people were not necessarily fixed in that habitual thinking, had the ability to look sideways and say, let's redefine this, let's understand things from a different perspective. Because as soon as we start seeing things from a different perspective, it doesn't give us new skill sets, but it allows us to use the skill sets that we've already got in a different way to which we are currently using them. But that to me is performance.
Yeah. And therefore, and I appreciate I think my final question to you, therefore, what you've just said about curiosity, do you think that's a natural trait that the high-performance people in sport has? In fact, they want to constantly be learning more and are prepared to ask the questions and never accept who they are, and they can always get better.
Yes, I think it is. I think business is a game of continual adjustment.
Yeah.
You know, we must learn to dance on a shifting carpet, not see the rug being pulled from under our feet. And I think that things move all the time. Of course they do, internally and externally. And then the only way in which we can improve is the question where we are in the moment in regard to improvement. So I think you're right. I think that people who perform at high levels in sport and in business have high levels of self-awareness, personal introspection, and they understand their business and understand themselves. Once we do that, we can start to play to our strengths. People think to be better, we need to fix our weaknesses. That's what we need to do. So as a business, we need to close the gaps, fix the weaknesses, find out what's wrong. We do it as leaders, we do it as people. I'm not sure that's true. I actually think it's about playing to our strengths, understanding what we're already good at and doing it some more, doing it more consistently. I've actually worked with teams before who have actually weakened a strength by trying to strengthen a weakness.
Right.
And this is where we need to be careful.
Yeah.
So I always say to people, it's about personal introspection. And for those people who don't like personal introspection, they should take a long, hard look at themselves.
Very nicely put.
Because it's very important.
And on that note, I will go and stare at myself in the mirror for a few hours and appreciate your time.
Perfect. Thanks ever so much.
Lovely spending time with you.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Thank you ever so much.
Cheers.
Thank you.